Hello and welcome to a Lovely Yarn podcast. My name is Amber and today I have a special episode for you all. Today's episode is going to be featuring 25 different patterns that you can make using that special skein of fingering weight yarn. So when I go on vacation or I'm visiting a different location, I often like to scope out the local yarn store, which I think most of us knitters do. And I typically will not buy a large quantity of yarn, but I will typically look for a special skein of yarn that reminds me of that place that I visited, or maybe there is a local dyer that dyes for that shop specifically. And typically that ends up being a skein of fingering weight yarn. So I have this basket of fingering weight yarn here. This is all indie dyed. I have a few other skeins that I've already broken into and maybe used just a little bit, so they're not in here because they're already made up into cakes. But I have just been thinking, I love my socks that I have made out of my indie dyed yarn that I've purchased. They're really cozy and warm and lovely and soft. But sometimes you just want to feature that beautiful skein of yarn somewhere other than on your feet. So that's why I decided to do some research and put this episode together. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, I do want to mention, because when I don't, people always ask, what I'm wearing is a ranunculus short-sleeved version that I made for the warmer months of the year. And this is knit out of Madeline Tosh vintage in the calligraphy colorway, and so I will link that down below. So let us get started. I do want to mention that I've broken this up into 4 different sections. We've got shawls, we've got cowls, we've got things for like mittens or fingerless mitts, and then I end it all with some hat patterns. So I will mention with the shawls, all of these shawls, unless I mention otherwise, were designed to use a full skein of yarn. So with fingering weight, that's usually anywhere between like 400 to 450 yards of yarn. Now, as we get into the patterns for the hands and the head, of course, that's going to use less yarn. But I just want to clarify that up front. Also, I will be mentioning needle size for these patterns, and I will be mentioning those in US measurements because I'm sorry, I'm really horrible with remembering how to translate the US to the like millimeters, but that is always on the Ravelry project page. So if you click through the link, you will find all that information there. It's going to be a mixture of paid for patterns as well as free patterns. I wanted to include both in this list. So yeah, let's just get started and see what we can make with that beautiful indie dyed yarn. So first up are the shawls. Now I don't have these in any specific order other than just their categories of where on your body you wear these things. So I do just want to say that up front. So let's start with the first pattern, which is the Snowflake Party by Martina Bem. This is a paid for pattern. It costs approximately $7.27 US, and you're knitting this on size US 4 and 5 needles. It is one size. It is an asymmetrical knit on the bias triangular shaped shawl. I love when I can knit a shawl on the bias. It just feels like it goes by so more quickly. The designer was inspired by snowflakes, so this was written as a winter pattern. However, when I look at this design, I actually, instead of seeing those as snowflakes in the lace motif, I actually see those more as flowers. And I did not realize that those were actually snowflakes until I read the inspiration behind the design. So this is mostly garter stitch except for the lace. And what I really love about this pattern is that it just kind of has those lace, the motifs kind of running at an angle in bands along the shawl. And I really love that. I think that's really pretty and just very feminine looking. Pattern number 2 is called Larch. And this is a pattern by Tinks and Frogs Rue. It is a free downloaded pattern and it's knit on size US 4. It is one size. It's a triangular shawlette or a neck scarf. This pattern uses fingering weight yarn. It was designed to use fingering weight yarn, but the designer states on the project page that you can actually pick any weight of yarn and then just find the needle that gives you the drape that you prefer. I love the simplicity of the garter stitch with the lace interspersed. That's what really draws me to this shawl. I am a big fan of garter stitch, and throw in some beautiful lace, and I think that's just makes for the perfect pattern. Number 3, this one is called Woven by Casapinka. It is a $7 pattern. So I am really not a weaver. I've dabbled in it. I'm definitely not a weaver. What am I saying? I've dabbled in it and I've done some small scale projects, but I really love the look of woven textiles. And so that's what drew me to this particular pattern. So it is knit on size 3 and 4 needles, and it's like a linen stitch is what it is, and it gives that woven look. And the designer said that this pattern is great to feature like a variegated skein of fingering weight yarn because of how the stitches are being slipped to get the woven look. It's just great for that beautiful variegated skein that you have. And it also features a seed stitch border. Okay, our 4th shawl that we're going to talk about today is a beautiful shawl called Wendy's Fern by Princess Grenoble, which is a free pattern. It's knit on size US 6 needles. It's triangular shaped. This pattern comes both written and charted. And I actually downloaded this pattern and I was looking at it, and there's actually 4 different charts because of the lace sections that run across. There's like 4 different lace sections that run across this shawl. The thing that I really love about this shawl are the bands of lace. It's so beautiful. Number 5 is the Spindrift shawl by Helen Stewart Designs, and this pattern is approximately $7.85, and it is knit using size US 5 and 6 needles. It is a crescent shaped shawl, which is my absolute favorite shape for a shawl. I love it. I feel like the crescent shaped shawls lay so nicely, and I feel like they're so much more easy to adjust. It is knitted top down. Helen Stewart wrote that she was inspired by the Pacific Ocean when she designed this shawl, and it has a deep eyelet border, which is what I really liked about this, besides the fact that it was a crescent shaped. And she states that it is good for first-time shawl knitters. Number 6 is called the Souvenir Shawl, and this designer, this is Maria Samuelson. This is a paid-for pattern. It's $4.78, and this designer actually wrote this pattern specifically for those skeins of fingering weight yarn that you buy when you're on vacation as a souvenir. So it is knit on size US 6 needles. It's knit top down. It is charted. It has a lace border. It's triangular shaped. So what I really liked about this shawl is the eyelet detail along the center spine of the shawl. And I also like how the edge of the shawl is kind of like jagged, I guess you could say. So that's what drew me to this shawl. Number 7 is a shawl by Joji Locatelli. It is the Venezia shawl. This is a $6 pattern knit on size US 7 needles. It is designed to use up a single skein, and it's worked tip to tip. It's reversible lace pattern, so it doesn't matter which way you wear it, and it is a diamond shaped shawl. So the interesting thing about this shawl is that you have like the center panel, which is basically the whole shawl, but then there is a lace motif that literally borders the entire shawl. And I don't think that I've ever knit a shawl that was shaped quite like this and had that kind of a lace border around the entire circumference of the shawl. So I thought that was a really nice, that would be I feel like that would be a really fun knit, something different. Number 8 is another free pattern. It is called Mara, and this is by Audrey Borrego. It uses 262 to 437 yards, depending on the size you want to make. So this is very size adjustable, which is great. It's knit on size US 4 needles. It is worked sideways in a simple knit and purl pattern, and then there's lace texture like interspersed between, and then it has an I-cord border. I really like the simplicity and the shape of this. I think it would be really nice to modify this to make a smaller, lighter, just like neck scarf type of shawl. Or I guess that you would call that a scarflet. So yeah, and I think that you could do this pattern with a tonal or a solid or even a variegated. You know, it's very flexible in the type of indie dyed yarn you would use. Okay, so I wanted to just kind of keep a little bit of variety in the type of shawls that I picked and the different types of patterns that I picked, so that they weren't all like the one I mentioned right before. So this next shawl is called the Glider Shawl, and this is by Megan Mako. It is a free pattern. It's knit on size US 6 and 9 needles. And the thing that's very interesting, and I'm not sure that I have my mind wrapped around this, is she states that it is both a triangular and a crescent shaped shawl. So I'm not really sure how she does that as far as design, but I see when I look at the pattern, I see that it's triangular shaped, but then if you look how it hangs in the front, then you see the crescent shaped kind of properties where the ends curl in the front. And so I think that's probably, I don't know how she would have done that with shaping, but that's why she's saying it's both triangular and crescent shaped. This shawl is just garter stitch, alternating with stockinette, alternating with lace, like eyelets. So I think it would be super easy. And I really like the look of that alternating garter, stockinette, and lace. And that is what drew me to this particular shawl. Our last shawl is called the Capistrano shawl by Megan Mako. This is another pattern by Megan Mako. I have never heard of this designer before, but she came up in my search and I loved both of these. This is a $5 pattern. It uses a size US 6 and it is an asymmetrical triangular shawl. Now, I'm not typically a fan of asymmetrical shawls. However, this shawl is absolutely gorgeous, and I think that if you love knitting lace, that this would be or if you want, I don't know that it's challenging, but you want a project that you have to focus on a little bit more, I think this would be a really good choice, because look at that gorgeous lace panel. It's beautiful. So she states that this shawl is garter and lace with a decorative bind off. And she does state here that it is best to use either a tonal or a solid colored yarn so that you can really showcase that lace panel. Okay, now we're moving into the cowl section of this episode. And the first pattern is actually a pattern that I personally have already made and plan on making more because I love this pattern so much. And this is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. It is called the Birds and Ships Cowl. And I will show you mine. This is my version. I knit this years ago. I don't even remember when, maybe 2018 or 19. I love that I can actually show you guys mine because most of these patterns you're going to see. I only have two that I've ever knit myself. So this is a $6 pattern. Well worth it though. This makes a great gift knit, by the way, if you're looking for a oh, and this is Hawthorn. Knit Picks Hawthorn in some color that I cannot remember because I no longer have the band, and I'm pretty sure, unless I might have a Ravelry project page for this, I don't know. But this uses 320 to 370 yards of fingering weight yarn knit on size US 4, and it is the bandana shaped, which I love. It's knit top down. So you work the first section flat and then you join together and work the rest in the round. I love this beautiful lace panel down the front, and the tassel is optional, but I like the tassel because when you're wearing it, it actually pulls down a little bit on the front of the cowl and it makes the cowl lay nicer and pulls out this lace pattern. So, and then it has the ribbing around the bottom. So this one is a lovely pattern. It was well worth the $6, and I will be making more because, as I said, I think this would be great for gifts. Okay, the next cowl that I have featured here is called the Early Spring Bud Cowl, and this is by Olga Olak. It's a $4 pattern, so very affordable. Uses a size US 4. She designed it in the spring when she was inspired by the wildflowers that she saw coming into bloom, and she designed it to be used as a light neck warmer. So it's, I think, if I remember correctly, she said that spring is her favorite season, so she felt very inspired with this design. It's knit in the round from the bottom up. It is knit on the wrong side, which means there is minimal purling. And the texture of this shawl, which you'll be able to see in the pictures, mimics the stems and then the tiny flower buds at the top. And she suggests that you use a tonal yarn or a lightly speckled yarn for the best effect to really be able to see those stems and buds. Next up is another bandana shaped cowl. This is called the Bell Cowl, and it is by Colleen Kinnersley. It's a $6 pattern. It uses 360 to 380 yards, and it's knit on a size US 6. It is an asymmetrical cowl that is knit on the bias, and it is shaped using simple increases and decreases. And then you do have to seam this one up the back in the end. So I think that if you've never seamed your knitted items before, this would be a great first pattern to try some seaming, because it would just be a simple straight seam. What I really liked about this pattern are the alternating ridges of the garter ridge and then the stockinette section. I think that looks really nice. It's simple, it's clean, and I also like the fact that it's a bandana cowl. I like wearing bandana cowls. I think they lay nicer, and then I feel like I can tuck them down in if I'm wearing with a coat. So I really like the look of that. Next is the Chanterelle Cowl by Maud Koppel. This is a free pattern. It is knit on size US 2.5, and it is designed to be a light spring or autumn cowl. It's knit in the bottom up in the round. It's mostly stockinette, and then it has the little delicate looking eyelet sections, which really drew me to this. It comes both charted and written. So again, I feel like if you want to really show off those beautiful little eyelets, probably this pattern would be great for a tonal or a lightly speckled yarn. This next cowl is just stunningly beautiful, and it's made differently than I thought. It is the Sand Island Cowl. The pattern is by Fiber of Maine, and it is a $4 pattern. Uses size US 1 and 3 needles. There's not a lot of information on the Ravelry page, but the keywords that the designer included in her pattern description included bottom up, knit in the round, ribbed, and slipped stitches. So it almost looks like, if you look down that front panel, and I think it actually repeats itself the whole way around the cowl, it looks like cabling. I've actually thought that those were cables when I first looked at this pattern, but then she doesn't have that as a keyword. So I think that she's achieving that look, or he. I don't know who wrote this pattern. I guess I shouldn't assume it was a female. But I think that it was probably achieved by using slip stitches, and it just looks like a cable. I also like the snugness of it. I was looking at project pages from people who have actually knit this, and this is the same with the Birds and Chips cowl. I like cowls that are snug because then I feel like they just do their job better. They keep my neck warm, and this is definitely meant to be a more snug cowl. All right, now we're going to move on to the hands portion. And the first pattern that I picked out are the Fantastic Fingerless Mitts by Stash Lounge. This is a free pattern. It uses anywhere from 100 to 420 yards, depending on what size you're making. And it's knit on a size US 1.5. So if you're making the smaller size, I thought that this would be a good pattern to choose and make multiple pairs out of the same skein. You could probably get two or three pairs, I guess, out of the same skein, depending on the size. Now, the thing that confused me is that it says that it uses 100 to 420 yards, but then the pattern is written only as one size, and it's written to fit women. So I don't know if the designer is thinking, like, depending on how far down you make the cuff it determines how much yarn you'll need. Not really sure about that. I like that this is a just simple, no fuss, fingerless mitt pattern that you can use to show off your interesting colorways that you have. Again, like this particular, the picture that the designer used, she's using a variegated skein of yarn, which I think that looks fantastic with that. Number 2 for the hands is the Matones Arbolito by Merche Hernandez. This is a free pattern, beautiful pattern. It uses between 164 to 219 yards, and it's knit on a size US 0 and 1. This pattern comes in 4 sizes, and arbolito means little tree, which you can see that's very obvious since the motif on the front of the glove is a tree shape, which is why I love the look of this. I love that tree shape. It is knit cuff up, and it looks like it's both written and charted from what I read on Ravelry. So cute little free pattern, 4 sizes. That's great for a free pattern, and just love, oh, that would be perfect for like the nature lover in your life. Number 3 are the Orchard Stroll Mitts by Woolen Cottage. This is a $5 pattern. This pattern uses 219 to 328 yards, and they are knit on size US 1.5. They come in 2 different sizes, which is small, medium, or large and extra large. They are knit bottom up, and they do have cables. And so this, from what I was reading, they are very simple cables, and they would be very much beginner friendly according to the designer, but they are going to require a little bit more thought than just, say for instance, those fantastic fingerless mitts that are just stockinette basically. Number 4 in our hands category are the Cloudburst mitts by Ariane Gray. This is a free pattern. There wasn't really much written about this, but I like the motif on the front. It uses a minimal amount of yarn. It's like basically 165 yards of yarn, knit on size US 2.5. It's written for 1 size, which the designer said is about a women's medium, but I love that little, it looks like eyelets, and I know the pattern does have a chart in it that you are to follow to make that, but I like the look of the lace panel down the front. Our last pattern in the hands category are the Winglet Mitts by Sachiko Bergen. I actually am in the process of making these, and I have been for a while. This is a $6.50 pattern. I'm actually trying on the one that I made so that I can show you. These have not been blocked. I haven't even finished the thumb on this first one. But do you see that beautiful moth motif? This is why I love this pattern. It's beautiful. I'm knitting this in some Knit Picks pellet, which is the perfect yarn for this in my opinion. It's knit on size US 0 and 1. They said that you need approximately 200 yards for this, but this is a 231 yard skein of pellet. And I am knitting, I think I'm knitting the small adult size, and you can see that I'm not going to need 200 yards. It comes in 4 sizes, youth and then adult, small, medium, and large. It's knit bottom up, it is charted, and the motif of the moth is created using knits, purls, decreases, and yarn overs, and it's very simple. It's a beautiful motif, but it's very simple to create. Okay, let's move on to our hat patterns. The first one is the Sock Head Hat pattern by Kelly McClure. This is a free pattern. She also has a sock head cowl pattern that you can also find online that is basically the same concept, but she actually gives you 7 sizes for this pattern, from baby to adult extra large, which is fantastic. She states that you'll need anywhere from 155 to 415 yards of yarn, and they are knit on, you'll be using size 2.5 US. This hat is knit from the bottom up to the crown. It has a wide brim and then lots and lots of stockinette. So this would be a great project to it'd be like a sock project, one that you can just take with you and just pick up and not have to think about it at all. Now, if I were to make this pattern, I don't really care for all that slouch in the back, so I would probably just make my brim really long so that I could fold it up at least double, maybe even 3 times, and then it would pull the crown part closer and tighter to my head. And of course, you could just not use your full skein of yarn as well. Now we have a cabled hat pattern. Again, I'm not a huge fan of knitting cables, but I like the look of them. This is a $5 pattern by Lena Matheson. It is called the Sledding and Snowballs Hat. It uses 220 to 340 yards of fingering weight yarn, and it is knit on size US 3. There's 4 sizes from child to adult extra large, and it's knit from the bottom up. Cables are simple, the designer states, so this would be a good advanced beginner pattern. And it's mainly just knit and purl with some simple cables. If you're looking for a ribbed hat, this next hat would be great for you. This is called the Head Sock. It's by Amanda Steck, and it is a free pattern that uses 250 to 400 yards of fingering weight yarn, knit on size US 2. She's written the pattern to fit a size medium and large. It's knit in the round, it's bottom up, and it is reversible. So when I was reading about this, the designer said that her problem with hats have always been the crown decreases. She's very particular about them. So she wrote this pattern to, you actually are doing knit 2 together and slip knits for the decreases. But then when you're all done, you flip your hat inside out and it gives a cleaner look. So I don't think I've ever knit I've never knit a hat like that where the finished product is actually in the inside out part. She also gives instructions if you want to use a different weight of yarn and not just the fingering weight. So that's fantastic for a free pattern. This is number 4. This is the Barley Sock Hat, and this is by Tin Can Knits. And I actually knit this one. I forgot earlier I had stated that I've knit 2 of the projects in this episode, but I've actually knit 3. Did I say this was a free pattern? So this is my version that I knit for my husband years ago. It is knit using 90 to 280 yards of fingering weight yarn, and you're knitting on size US 2 and 4. 7 sizes are included for starting at newborn and going the whole way up to adult large. It's knit from the bottom up, and it has this garter stitch section. So they have a whole line of patterns that like the barley socks, the barley hat, the barley sweater, and they all feature this panel of garter stitch. So if I were to make this again, my husband likes this because it's a lighter hat, and it's not real thick, it's not real long, it just fits over his ears perfectly. But if I were to knit this for myself, I would knit a really long brim, like ribbed brim, that I could fold up, because when I wear a hat, it's typically when it's really, really cold and I need extra warmth around my ears. Last pattern for this episode is the Artichoke Hat. This is a pattern by Matilda Cruz. It's $4.96. It's knit using 180 to 200 yards, and it's knit on size US 2.5 and 4 needles. It comes in 1 size, and it is a bottom up lace motif, which is very beautiful. That is what drew me to this hat. That's what makes it different than the other hats, that beautiful lace motif. And it is charted. There wasn't a whole lot of other information on the project page for this pattern, but there were 145 projects that have been knitted, and I was looking at them, and they're all very beautiful. So that's reassuring as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and if you stuck through to the end, I want to offer up a little special giveaway for you. So I would love to give away a copy of one of these patterns that I have featured here, or any other single skein pattern that you may have found on Ravelry in your research. And if you have, by the way, share that down below. But anyway, all you need to do is comment down below telling me the single skein project pattern that you would like to win, and I will go ahead and gift that to you. And also, I failed to mention at the beginning, all of these patterns can be found in the link down below that goes directly to a bundle on Ravelry, where I have linked all the patterns that I've mentioned, as well as many more. So if you go to that and you find one on there that I did not mention on this podcast episode, and you like that one, just let me know if you win the giveaway and you would like that one instead. It was impossible for me to include all of these because I would just be talking for way too long and that would get boring. So yes, comment down below with the pattern that you would love to knit, that you would love to win if your name gets pulled for the giveaway. I will announce that on my next episode, which will just be a regular podcast episode, which will probably be in a week or so. And thank you guys all so much for watching. Thank you for your support. Give this video a like or a thumbs up if you liked it. That is very helpful for me. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.